Hello, hello. I'm Strider, your host here at Author in the Headlights, and thank you for joining us. And today we have a mother-daughter duo in Helen and Elizabeth Davis with Dead Fish Books. Hi, you guys.
Hi.
Hello.
Yeah, glad to have you with us today. Now, you guys are not on the West Coast like I am. Where do you come from out there?
We are in Dayton, Ohio, home to the Jesus statue that burned down about a decade or so ago.
I had forgotten about that, but yes, you had a statue that did burn down.
Struck by
That
lightning.
by lightning. Anyway, so now you as a mother-daughter team, Helen, I believe you probably or started out with the writing element of it, correct? You're the author.
I started out writing when I was about 10 years old.
So
So,
2, 3 years ago. It's
yeah. So I was writing for about 50 years, I think. No, yeah, about 50 years before we got this press going.
mhm. And that is Dead Fish Books, which is also unique. We'll get to that in a little bit. Let's get back to your writing. So, what genre do you write? What did you start out with?
Science fiction, speculative fiction, fantasy, and inadvertently, I keep writing horror.
Horror. Okay. That's science fiction, horror, speculative fiction. Okay, that carries itself pretty well in that set and series. And you've got, let's see, Helen, you've got, I don't know, 5 books maybe out there. See, Maroon Sunya and Universe of Attraction by Blade and Cloth. Gosh, you got all kinds of anthologies too, and that's kind of where the two of you work together most, correct?
Yeah, the anthologies are of original fiction by different authors who send into the anthology rather than it just being us.
Okay, and that brings in your Dead Fish Books, right? Now that is a unique name. How do you come up with Dead Fish Books?
Dead Fish Books originally was a title to a book my mom published specifically to give to kids when she did substitute teaching for a bit because they left instructions to the substitute teachers that the kids were to quietly um, use their reading materials when they finished with schoolwork. So she compiled up some stories that she had not sold at the time,
So,
but
what grade did you used to teach, Helen?
I would do middle school and high school.
Okay,
And it was the middle school students who were usually given the instruction to uh, read their own reading material.
and I know about how that goes too. So now, when I was there, I loved reading, so that was never a problem with me. I always had my nose in more than one book at a time, and I still do. So hundreds and hundreds of books over my life. Which gives me a pretty good basis to know when it's a good story and when it's not. And I presume that's like yourself. And now you put those stories together when you pick up a good one, and that's Dead Fish Books. And you actually buy other people's stories and you put that on into your books.
Yeah, saying they're anthologies. The first two have been of 20 different authors from around the world. And the current one that we're working on, we don't know how many people are going to get in. It may be more than 20 this time.
Okay, so if you take someone's books, what are you looking for?
The second one, we had found the cover and wanted to do anthology of stories based on the cover.
Okay.
And that's Yay, They're Here. First contact stories that had optimism in them. And the one that we're working on now, again, we started with a cover, and the title of it is Madam, Don't Forget Your Sword. And it's stories from the sidekicks, henchmen, and minions.
I like that. I could definitely see that as a storyline. Now, Elizabeth, do you go through and figure out which of these work? I mean, do people put them
yeah,
in to your online presence there and you choose from them, or how does that go happen? What do you do?
usually people submit to us. We occasionally have a few people we hunt down to tell them to send us a story, or that I like that story you showed me. is it still available? But normally they send it in to us, and then we sit there and go through it, and we have a criteria, and part of it is we want a wide variety of stories.
Okay,
So
so you choose a topic basically for your anthology, and you kind of build a cover to fit that, or vice versa. You get a great cover and you build a story fit to go behind it. And then do you advertise that?
yes, you advertise through various ways. There are Facebook groups dedicated to themed calls for submissions. There is Submission Grinder and Duotrope, which will both list markets that are looking for work. And also, I advertise on various writers' discords that I'm part of because, well, if I'm going to be there, I might as well let them know that there's a place they can submit their work. People tend to be a lot more forgiving if you're advertising calls for submissions than advertising buy our book.
Very true. Very true. So do you write for your anthologies too, or you just mark it out of the people's writing?
I write too. You will find my writing in all of the anthologies and also quite a few publications outside of ours. Short story
Short story
market,
market.
microfiction market. I actually just had some haikus published and Spooky Magazine.
Cool stuff. So if I was a short story writer, I could get a hold of you or look on to deadfishbooks.com and see where you could drop your story and maybe actually get published because you're
Yes,
part of that.
we are currently not open for submissions. We are between calls, so if you're interested, sign up to the newsletter. We try to let the newsletter know first before we open up to the general public when there are calls for submissions. If
We
one
do
thing
have
or
a
another,
submission page, which lets you know what we're looking for, when we're open, what our guidelines are, and it does have the email that we want people to submit to.
and please read all of our submissions.
Make sure wherever you're submitting your work that you always read all the details about the submission first.
All of our guidelines that you need to know are nice bullet points.
Okay, that makes it easier.
We have had some submitters who have either deliberately or ignorantly ignored a number of the guidelines. One thing is that they seem to think that if they make it flashier and louder and brighter with lots of colors and lots of fonts, that it will make the editors more likely to notice their story and buy it. And it is like, if I notice the fonts and the fact that it is purple or in a number of very strange fonts, or that it has pictures added to it, I'm very likely to remember it, but not in a good way.
That is true. That is true. You don't want to stand out for the wrong reasons.
And I have had to reject 2 stories for being flat unreadable because somebody decided to get cute with the presentation.
Okay, that's good to know. So all of you out there that are short story writers, you can check that out and make sure that you do it correctly when you submit your work and you have a chance of getting published. Because you put out, what, about a book a year, correct?
Yeah,
So as a short story now, I know that we come with novels and different genres have different word count as typical. Um, and then we have novellas, and then we have short stories. So what is your word count on a short story?
Real quick, that short story is more of a, or that the stories are more of a concept. And it doesn't cease being a short story just because it's 1 or 2 words over the word count or one
Okay.
or two words under. It's more the structure of it, how complicated it is. So one of my analogies is that a short story is like a car that you get into and you go from point A to point B. A novella is more like a party where you're taking 2 or 3 different cars and stopping at several points along the way. A novelette is where you've got a large bus and you've got a cruise in there and you've got some tour buses. And a novel is pretty much like a round the world cruise. So, I mean, with each one is a level of more complication. And you can have some works that are really long, but in structure, they're actually a short story. They're very direct, they go from A to B. And then there have been some novelettes that, or novellas even, that have been wondrously complicated. And you're looking at a little mini novel there.
And still get in the word count of that size of book or story. Yeah.
So when we ask for a guideline, or when any market is asking for a word count guideline, they're trying to give you an idea of how complicated a story they want. Range. And we normally look for 2,000 to 7,000 words.
Okay. Now that is the structure that you need to write for your books for the potential of being included in your anthologies. So check out at deadfishbooks.com and look for how you submit and the guidelines and the size of your work, and you have a chance. Yeah.
Yeah, and we really love seeing first-time writers, even if the work isn't quite good enough to be published. We really love seeing the stories and seeing what creative talents we're going to see in the future from these writers.
Now, do you edit that and assist them at that point? If they have good work, good story, and they just need to improve a little, do you work with that?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, there you go. See, now there's a good reason to listen into this show, because that's not only method and manner, it's how you can actually get your work in print for those of you that are writers. And we are running out of time. I got a flash already. This is Helen and Elizabeth Davis. Thank you for spending some time with us today. You can find their books on their website at deadfishbooks.com and at durhampublishing.com at the bookstore. And thank you for joining us here at Author in the Headlights, sponsored by durhampublishing.com. Until next time.